presentation. A sincere thanks out to between the First and Second World Wars, the British produced a number of light tanks that saw significant use in training, but limited use in actual battle. The Vickers Model 1937 was one of those vehicles. All of these tanks were about 5 tons in weight, capable of about 20 miles per hour or 32 kilometers an hour, which was considered very fast and maneuverable when compared to those used in World War I. It was not really expected these light tanks would be used against anything except troops of infantry or other light tanks, and because of that, armament was usually a machine gun, or in this case, a 40mm gun. The tank was first put into production in 1933 and remained in production until 1938 with only minor changes and maintenance during its production life. It was developed specifically as an export tank that was produced by 11 different countries in various.
All right, that's amazing. Let's hear it for Jonathan and the tank crew here. An amazing replica of a very rare tank. Privately built and privately owned, keeping history alive, not in a museum. Let's see this thing do another lap, and then we'll just pull you over here because the OMVA is going to do laps together, okay?
Understand who we are. Our members are thrilled to answer any questions you might have. If you're thinking of someday owning a Up next is a 1944 Lynx 2 armored stud car. This vehicle is owned by OMVA Peter Duggan from Cherry Valley, Ontario. This particular vehicle was that was based out of CFB Trenton. These vehicles were in the service of the Canadian military from 1997 to 2007. And in fact, this very vehicle was deployed after service to the Honduras and Sri Lanka for disaster relief area. OMVA member Robin Craig is driving the vehicle here today and has brought it out for display. And help us bring the display up to the public. Counterpart, or more commonly referred to as Jeeps, are technically classified as a quarter-ton four-wheel drive utility truck. The name Jeep is generally accepted as being derived from the letters GP that were used by Ford in the naming of their version of this vehicle. Over 600,000 of these were built during World War II by Ford. They were used for many purposes such as reconnaissance, gun towing, cabling, field ambulances, and suitable even run them on railway tracks. They were a favorite choice amongst military vehicle enthusiasts because of their size and ease of operation and availability of parts. The 21st Armored Regiment, Governor General Stuttgart in Canada. To add to the essence of his Jeep, John is dressed in World War II community as a car. It is in fact a 4x4 light truck and was one of many variants in that series. The command car was primarily used by the U.S. during World War II, however it was also used by a few other Allied forces producing Dixie's and post-war retrofits. It was designated and built for the purpose of providing transportation, reconnaissance, and communications for staff officers on the battlefield. Because of its distinctive shape and usage, it quickly became a prime target by the enemy, which influenced the decision to cease production in 19. Making this in fact a rare vehicle to see it in again. This is the last OMBA vehicle being showcased in this portion of the show. Once again, a big thanks from the OMBA members for being here, and we look forward to seeing and chatting with you in our display area. I'll now turn you back over to Jeremy, and please enjoy the rest of your
person from the CFP Board Museum who has currently been trained to drive this vehicle. Let me introduce to you Dave Thompson, recently retired from the Canadian Armed Forces and now the curator of the CFP Board Museum. And Dave, I'm really sorry, but I'm getting hoarse from, it's tank dust. It's tank dust, guys, okay? I'm going to hand the mic over to you and go drink some water. And why don't you tell the people first, what is this vehicle, the history of this vehicle, and then just a little bit about your museum, where you are, because I'm sure there's many here who have never heard of the CFP Board of Tank Museum.
Thanks, Jeremy. We really appreciate being here again. So, this is an M14 41 Italian tank. So, Model 14 built in 1941. How we ended up with it? Colin, the crew commander, who's in behind, he does a lot of our research for our vehicles and that. What he's found out is that it was in North Africa, it was suspected in North Africa, along with one of our M13 40 tank as well, that came from North Africa. Came into Canada, went to
on tentage there, they got a lot of cool stuff to show you, some information about their museum. Dave, thanks to you and your team. Let's get a round of applause to the volunteers from the CFP Board Museum and see this M1441 one last time. Meet the Tanks. I know it's less of a show with music and themes. We really want you to, I'll introduce you to someone else. One of the experiences that we had several years ago was we were actually contracted by World of Tanks. They came up here for a whole week and they recorded the sounds of our vehicles. So I can tell when you're playing the game World of Tanks, believe it or not, many of the sounds you hear in the game, the engines, etc., were recorded with either privately owned or museum vehicles around the world, to give it that little level of realism. Okay, thanks. Hector, you can take them back to the hangar. Oh, yes.
definitely have one of the more coming up here to Canada. Nick, I'm going to let you do your thing.
I know how you stood on the block as I came up. Good afternoon! Hello! Okay, they're still alive. Alright, Story Centurion, and it is so good to see this thing. I've always believed that tanks are built to run, not just sit there gathering dust in a museum. And not too long ago, this was sitting there gathering rust as a gate guard. So they had a little project to do over COVID pause, and it's up and running again. The story of Centurion starts 1943. The British Army can take a breather, or at least the designers can, because they now have lots of tanks coming from America. The Comet, which is an interim tank, is entering production, and they sit down and they think, okay, let us throw away the roadblock, start from the start, and see if we can build a good tank. And I would argue
this is, for its time, the best tank ever built. T-54, T-55 supporters, you do have an argument, yes, but you're wrong. This was designed basically to go up against Panthers and Tigers and win. The original design requirement was to fit a 17-pounder, that excellent British anti-tank gun, which just did not fit well into anything the British had done previously. So in order to make a turret ring big enough to take the 17-pounder, they threw away the requirement and said this has got to fit on railway gauge. And they just said, if they had a blank slate, what should we build? They took the Meteor engine, they upgraded it, 650 horsepower. They made a sloping front on the vehicle, makes a nice change considering what the British were doing before. They threw away the Christie suspension that was taking up so much room inside the tank. They replaced it with Horseman bogies. These are also easy to replace. And then they realized that 17-pounder could be replaced by something bigger. In this case, the 20-pounder. Eventually, Canadian tanks that went to Germany would receive a 105. But they hung around here in Canada with a 20-pounder because it was cheaper. The Achilles heel of Centurion was the fuel range. That petrol or gasoline, I don't know what the Canadian word is, engine sucked up so much fuel it couldn't go anywhere. So they came up with a couple of ideas to extend the fuel range, including a trailer, the mono trailer, which was universally hated. And in this particular vehicle, you see a protrusion out the back. That is the LR fuel tank, the long-range fuel tank. The tank also was one of the first to come with a dual-axis stabilization system. So Sherman's came with a single-axis stabilizer. This would stabilize in traverse and elevation. This tank would see service all around the world. Little known trivia fact, the largest foreign purchaser of Centurion tanks was the U.S. government. They gave up to all these other countries because the Americans were too busy building M47s for the Korean War. So first combat in 1950 with the British Army in Korea. They would see combat service around the world. They would see service in Israel, 67, 73. They would see service in Vietnam with the Australian military. And the last recognizable gun tanks were removed from Swedish service about the year 2000. The South Africans do still use a variant called the Oliphant, but it has been so far rebuilt it hardly looks like a Centurion at all. So I think I've been rambling on long enough. Let's hear that meteor roar. With American Brown gearbox capable of neutral steer, which is basically one track going each direction at the same time. Still a manual transmission though, big gear signal to really drive the legs. Ton of prime British steel. Canada started off the purchase of about 250 Mark IIIs. Eventually will have sold 350 Centurions of various marks.
don't know what that is, just check YouTube or Convoy or whatever. It's his thing. We're now up to lap 6. And we're very fortunate to get this last read during the pandemic. Retired from the Canadian Armed Forces. It actually has a pretty decent turning radius. So let's just have a closer look. There you go. Now an incredibly fast vehicle can reach speeds, I believe, of 110 kilometers an hour. Now for an armored vehicle that heavy, that's pretty impressive. Great off-road capability. Canada has exported vehicles based on this and it is a very successful and popular wheeled armored vehicle within NATO. Definitely picking up a lot of tank tops. Being now, you'll start coughing. Sorry. Okay, that's the last read. We have 2 more to show you. So, just by a show of hands, how can military companies in the United States and also around the world, in Canada too, bid on these contracts. And the company Oshkosh Defense came out in 2008, 50 caliber round. And I think you guys heard the 50 cal during the Second World War show. Yeah, thank you. So ladies and gentlemen, that was our segment, Meet the Tanks. Can I just give one last round of applause for the volunteers who operated all the vehicles, the guest speakers, everyone who put this together for you to come out to Oshawa today. And I swear, if he puts that thunder on one more time. So we understand that, you know, they're so excited that you guys came out here. We heard from many of our speakers, from the museum president. We're so happy to have you guys back. We're so looking forward to more shows and bigger shows and better shows in 2022. But thank you for coming out, supporting the museum, and enjoying our shows today and our displays from our guests. It is through donations and admissions of people like you that keep history moving and keep these vehicles moving. So I'm going to give you an applause. You should give yourself as well.